Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Know Your Enemy podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor behind thesteelcurtain.com, and my co-host, as always, film guru extraordinaire, Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing good, Michael.
Great to hear. And as we do every Wednesday night, we like to bring on a special guest from one of our sister stations. Tonight, from the Daily Norseman, Mr. Eric Thompson. Eric, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, just great. Anticipating how the Vikings could possibly break the hearts of their fans yet again tomorrow night. But they come up with new and different creative ways every single week. And I'll actually be there in person tomorrow at US Bank Stadium. So I'm excited and scared all at the same time.
Perfect. Now, it really has been one of those seasons for the Vikings. I believe it's been 8 one-point contests. Thursday night football is typically weird regardless of the matchup, just with smaller playbooks, less game planning. Are you anticipating this game to be once again one of those 1-point games, one of those like couple points here or there, just a one play makes a difference sort of a game?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're contractually obligated at this point to have one score games because I don't think it's 1-point games, but all but one game, the week 3 win, the home win against Seattle, has been a one possession game at the final, and these two teams and it's. I guess it doesn't really matter how the Vikings are matched up because it seems like they'll play almost to the exact level of their competition, no matter who it is, whether it's the division leading Packers or the winless Lions. They play the teams equally as tough. And I think the Steelers are actually a pretty even matchup. I think the Vikings getting a couple people back on the defense, especially their linebackers, is going to help big time. But there's a lot of talent on Pittsburgh's side of the ball as well. So yes, my heart, I don't know if I can take it. I feel like every week takes another 4 years off my life watching this team, but I would expect another close game. That it's been almost nothing but the entire 2021 season.
Yeah, for the Steelers side of Thursday night games, we have a pretty harsh home road split. It's one of my few rules on the Steelers is the Steelers will not win in California. And number 2 is the Steelers will not win on Thursday night on the road. Since Mike Tomlin took over, the Steelers are 2-6 on Thursday night road games. They are 6-1 when they're at home. Does Minnesota have I know it's kind of a league-wide thing, but I know not everyone is quite as stark as like the Steelers there. Does Minnesota have a Thursday night like disparity, or it's just another normal game for them?
I don't think there's a huge split on the Thursday night. I know there was recently, before the Kirk Cousins days, there was a really big dearth of primetime games. It's the Zimmer's first several years, it was a really bad record. Then the Vikings started doing better. But I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure Kirk Cousins in his career is 8-17 in primetime games. And I know he just won I think it was like his first Monday night game last season out of like 12 or 13 tries. So both Kirk Cousins and the Vikings kind of have a pretty poor recent records in primetime games. But as far as the actual Thursday night in short rest, obviously I think it's pretty close to the NFL standard. Of course, it's more helpful to play at home on the short rests and things like that. And they're usually probably a little worse, but nothing stark more than, the Kirk Cousins is less than stellar primetime record.
So with the Vikings offensive injuries, which are a pretty long list these days, Thielen has been ruled out. Christian Darrisaw has been ruled out. Dalvin Cook is questionable, but just from some of the reports I've read, it seems like it's probably more likely he isn't playing than is. That's just some of the brief reading I've done. But if the Steelers are able to kind of bracket coverage Justin Jefferson, where should we look out for some of this other secondary offense to come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the huge one. I think Adam Thielen being out for the game, because having the 1-2 punch of Jefferson and Thielen is you can't really double team all the time one of those two guys because the other one's going to get open there. I would expect KJ Osborne to get a lot more snaps and a lot more targets. He's been kind of a breakout player. I don't think he played a single offensive snap his rookie year last year, and he's been the first reliable third wide receiver the Vikings had in a long time. That said, he hasn't had to carry that load of being the second guy in command yet, so that'll be interesting. I think Tyler Conklin, the tight end, who's a backup himself because Irv Smith went down for the season before the season even started. That's another part of the Vikings offense that's really going to be missing. But Conklin, his blocking has been kind of hit and miss this year, but he's been a pretty reliable pass catcher. So I think those two would be definitely more involved with Thielen out, and maybe sprinkle in some good old veteran D.D. Westbrook, who's been mostly a punt returner and a rotational guy, usually getting about 10 or 11 snaps. He might get a handful more targets as the third wide receiver going into Thursday now.
Now, for Pittsburgh Steelers fans who have not, probably a lot of them probably haven't heard much about Justin Jefferson, who's one of the great receivers. Like, I absolutely love watching him play, but because it's on the Vikings and we're on the East Coast over here, like, we don't hear about him. So tell Steeler fans what Justin Jefferson brings to the Minnesota Vikings.
I think it might be easier to say what he doesn't bring to the Vikings. I mean, he was a really good draft pick. People were really happy with him, especially when you compare him to, you can give your neighbors in Pennsylvania a little guff about them passing over Justin Jefferson for Jalen Reagor instead. I think that was there is a video of when Justin Jefferson got drafted. Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer basically ran to the phone to call in that pick because they were so excited that Jefferson had fallen to them. But even as great of a prospect as he was, he is by far over. Like he's exceeded almost every expectation. The knock on him was his size. He's not a very big guy. He's pretty skinny. He's a slender guy, but a lot of people thought maybe at the NFL level he wasn't going to be able to get off the line against press coverage, but he can get open just about anywhere on the field. If you look at his next gen stats chart, I'd recommend that if you head out there from his game last week against the Lions, it looks like just a beautiful painting. Like he is all over the field, all sorts of depths. He's lining up on both sides of the field. He's lining up in the slot, and his route running and his ability to just find ways to get open it's really incredible. I believe he is second or third basically all time in yardage through the first 2 seasons already. I think he's going to be passing Randy Moss pretty soon, and that's usually a good company to keep. And I think the only one that he'd be trailing after that is Odell Beckham Jr., who had probably the best 2-year start to a career in the NFL. So he's already in great company, and the sky's the limit for him. He seems to be he has a really good head on his shoulders, and hopefully it's only going to get better. But again, it's going to be tested against this Pittsburgh defense, especially without that 1-2 punch of him and Thielen, because like you already had mentioned, the Pittsburgh secondary can definitely rotate a lot more coverage over to him. So it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings attack that on Thursday.
So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Christian Darrisaw has been ruled out for this game. Across this Minnesota Vikings O-line, what are they going to have to do to slow down T.J. Watt and the NFL sack leaders in total sacks against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, that's going to be a lot easier said than done. The good thing is that Watt usually lines up on the side of Brian O'Neill, who's by far the most reliable pass blocker the Vikings have. I believe he's a third year right tackle. Just got a big extension before this season. He's definitely worth it. He is the one part of this always seeming to be in flux offensive line that is a very reliable, especially in the pass blocking game. That said, if he switches over to the other side, that's kind of open season right now because with Darrisaw out, who it was again, he's only played a handful of games, missed the beginning of the season with injuries. Now he's back injured again. It'll probably be Oli Udoh again on the left tackle spot. That's what it was last week. And he was the starting right guard for every game up until last week. And my ongoing joke on Twitter was basically you couldn't spell holding without OLI because he'd get called for 2 or 3 holding penalties every week. He did better than expected, I guess, last week at the left tackle, but that's still a huge question mark. And by proxy, I think Ezra Cleveland, the left guard, he had a really good game the week before next to Darrisaw. He kind of saw his production and performance drop off just because I think he had Udoh kind of to worry about on the left side of him. And the interior of the line has always been a concern. It's been a concern basically for the last 5-6 years, basically, like since the Matt Burke days. I think we got spoiled, but it's been pretty rough going. Right now, it looks like it's going to be Garrett Bradbury as the starting center and Mason Cole as the starting right guard. Mason Cole's been a pleasant surprise. The Vikings picked him up from Arizona as kind of a rotational guy. He started while Garrett Bradbury was out with COVID for a couple of weeks and actually started when Bradbury was eligible to come back from COVID. But I think what you're going to see across the line is Udoh, Cleveland, Bradbury, Cole, and then O'Neal. And again, out of those 5, especially with the pass blocking with the rusher like Watt, O'Neal's the only reliable one. But I mean, Watt can get through on anyone. I'd expect him to introduce himself to Kirk Cousins a few times tomorrow night.
Now, to jump in just before Geoffrey's question, we do have a super chat here from longtime listener Brad Jewett. He says, "Hi, Eric. With all due respect, I hope you guys lose." First of all, I'm going to butcher this name, but Dan Chizena is one of my best friends, and I'm curious to see if he'll get any reps.
Yep.
Okay, I did okay. With number 19, Adam Thielen out. So what do you expect at that receiver spot in that receiver rotation?
You're definitely going to see Dan in special teams. He is he's kind of the unsung hero with he's an incredible punt gunner. He's really, really fast. He's one of the fastest people on the team, and he has made tons of plays on punt coverage. If the Steelers aren't calling fair catches, watch for a Chisna on that. I still don't expect he's going to be involved very much in the offense, even with Thielen out, because I think he's probably the 4th wide receiver. And the Vikings very rarely run for wide. And I think you'll see a lot more of D.D. Westbrook and, like I said, a lot more of KJ Osborne. But I still don't think you'll see a ton of Chisna. But you'll see him on the field, and you'll probably notice him, especially on special teams.
All right, you mentioned Kirk Cousins. With Kirk Cousins, what is the best way to attack him? Are there good defensive strategies to go after Kirk Cousins? Are there things to avoid doing? What has he shown over the years?
Well, I think the number one thing, it's been my ongoing kind of problem. I've mentioned the interior of the offensive line, which has been pretty poor. I think that's the number one way to short circuit the Vikings offense is pressure directly up the middle. If you look at old games against the Vikings, haven't played the Bears yet this season, which is super weird. But every time Akeem Hicks, who is a really big, strong defensive tackle, is in the middle, he just absolutely destroys anything the Vikings want to do. Cousins is actually pretty good. Like if it's just coming from Watt's side and they just have to worry about one side, they can kind of remedy that with some rollouts. And Cousins is very good at normally very good at throwing on the run and with the bootlegs and basically if everything is going on schedule, Cousins is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's when you get him off schedule, especially right away off the snap, if it's something up the middle, that's where the bad throws and the fumbles and everything else start happening. So that I would expect Tomlin to bring some pressure up the middle, or at least get the Vikings guessing of where the pressure is coming from. Because if you give Cousins time and the plays develop how they're supposed to, he can definitely pick apart just about any defense. But when the pressure is on consistently, his numbers, I mean, if you look at his splits even through this year, I think he's still like the 2nd highest graded PFF quarterback. But if you look at his splits when under pressure and not under and kept clean, it's really stark. So that's the number one thing is pressure, and especially up the middle.
Now, one of the interesting storylines that I've kind of read going on with the Vikings in the last couple of weeks is that of Everson Griffen. What is his whole situation? Should we expect him to be playing in this game? Is he still suspended? I know it's a whole ordeal.
He is definitely out for this game. I believe he is on the NFI list. I think that's the official classification. Unfortunately, I think he might be. I'm pretty sure he's done for this season, and I would gather probably done with his maybe if not his Vikings career, maybe his NFL career. This is the second time that Everson has had something off the field. After this latest episode, he came out and admitted that he was bipolar, and he had a 2018 episode, which was pretty similar. It was right before the Bills upset, I believe, in week 3, and it was the day before a game, and it's basically, I think, I hate to speak on it too much, but I think it's just something with it. It's definitely a mental health issue. And it sounds like he's getting the help he needs. It was just for Everson. Unfortunately, it was a really thin balance, I think, between being his usual self, and that's for when the 2018 episode happened. I mean, I covered most of Everson's training camps, and he was always the first one on the field, one of the most happy, jovial guys, always talking, always really outgoing. It's just you didn't know what was happening kind of behind closed doors. And that's why I'm sure that people have seen, the clips of the Instagram stories he was posting and everything else like that. And I think he was just in a really bad place there mentally, and I don't think it's all the time, but when he gets to that place like that, it was really kind of a struggle for him. So I mean, if he returns to the NFL in any capacity, that's great. I think it's the number one thing I think for the Vikings and for Vikings fans is to make sure that he gets the help he needs off the field, because it can be kind of scary with that kind of diagnosis.
Now the Vikings have kind of a more veteran defense. There's a lot of guys either approaching 30 or already over 30. Guys like Patrick Peterson, Sheldon Richardson, Anthony Barr, guys like that have been around the league a while. Is this defense still as good as it has been in the past? Is it still capable of that, or are we looking at a Minnesota team that's a defense is kind of seeing the end of its days?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of aging people on this defense, and a lot of them came on one-year deals, like Patrick Peterson. Michael Pierce came on a multi-year deal, but he sat out last year due to COVID. And a lot of these pieces, they aren't long-term solutions for the Vikings. And the 2020 defense was so depleted by injury. I mean, I think they were dead last or one of the very last in total sacks. Now they're definitely up there in sacks, but they're missing a lot of pieces. Last week, that upset against the Lions, they were missing both of their starting linebackers, Anthony Barr, who's been dealing with injuries most of the last 2 seasons, and Eric Kendricks, who really makes that defense tick, and that the Vikings really missed him. And Danielle Hunter, of course, is out for the season again. I mean, it's been pretty bad luck with injuries. The defense is definitely not what it used to be. That the Mike Zimmer defenses that from the first 5-6 years of his tenure, that definitely has not been it this year. I think Patrick Peterson has been a pretty pleasant surprise. Of course, he missed last week as well, being out, even fully vaccinated. I think he had to miss 2 games due to COVID protocols. And Bashad Breeland has been nothing short of not a lot of fun. I'll say that I'll be polite, because he sends out tweets to fans that really that bad mouth him too much. But he has been a pretty big disappointment. And if you even go back to Jeff Gladney, who the Vikings drafted last year in the first round, had a domestic abuse thing. He was off the team before the season even started. Cam Dantzler has been pretty up and down through most of the season. I think Xavier Woods has been a good pickup, but that's another 1-year pickup. So long story short, the defense is not where it needs to be. I think it's going to be better than last week, for having their starting linebackers back, and they're getting a little healthier this week. But it's still it's been a big disappointment, I think, overall for the Vikings, because again, like if you look at Kirk Cousins' numbers and the offense on the whole, I think the numbers look better than the offense, at least consistency wise. The Vikings left a lot of points on the field in the first half, I thought, against the Lions, but the offense did enough to win that game, and they let Jared freaking Goff drive down the field with no timeouts and complete what I thought was a pretty easy pass for the game-winning touchdown last week. So the defense definitely has to get better. I know Big Ben isn't at his absolute apex anymore, but he showed last week that he still has a little bit left in the tank. So it's going to be a really interesting battle. I think points might be hard to come by on either side, but again, with Vikings and Steelers games have been in their fair share of 1-score games as well this season. So I'd expect a pretty hard fought battle on both sides of the ball.
Now, after bringing up the defense, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the offensive line struggles of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But rookie Najee Harris has had some success running the ball still as a pretty powerful runner. How do you kind of anticipate the Vikings trying to slow down pretty much the heartbeat of the Steelers offense?
Yeah, that's going to be a really tough ask for the Vikings, because I think that's even, I mentioned a lot of the secondary guys, but the run defense just hasn't been there when it's needed to be. They have allowed. I mean, it used to be an anomaly when the Vikings allowed more than 100 yards rushing in a game, and I think they've done that in all but 2 or maybe 3 games this year, and they've allowed over 200 a couple times as well. And the Lions even got to 100 yards, even though they barely ran the ball last week. So it's that's definitely a concern, because that's the one way to wear down this defense, I think, especially in the fourth quarter. And with Harris, he's had a tough go of it this year, I think, with the help in front of him, but he can definitely break those long runs. Again, I think with Pierce being back in the lineup and having both starting linebackers in Barr and Kendricks, I'm a little more confident with that. But if the Steelers can control the ball and avoid mistakes, it's going to be hard for the Vikings defense to get off the field.
I want to jump back to offense real quick because I didn't ask you about Dalvin Cook. Do you expect him to play this week, or do you think he's going to miss the game? What's going on with him?
I would probably put it as more doubtful than not, just because it's on a short week and it was a pretty serious shoulder injury. But I definitely wouldn't rule it out completely either, because it's a shoulder that he's had problems with before, but it seems like it might be an injury where it's just kind of a pain tolerance thing. And Cook himself has said he wants to go tomorrow, but of course, that most football players will say that, and the Vikings know how important it is. I am a little worried just because he fumbled on the play where he got hurt last time, and if he's taking a shot to the shoulder, especially with a couple of the big hitters that the Steelers have on defense, just that could happen again, and then he could make it worse and miss the rest of the season, maybe be hurt into next season as well. So if it's just a pain tolerance thing and they can make that work, sure, then I think he might be able to play. I'd still have my doubts, especially with the kind of shoulder injury that it was, and the fact that it doesn't drop off a ton with Alexander Madison in the backfield. He's a pretty good backup. I like to call him Cook light, because he does most of the things that Cook does, maybe just without as much as explosiveness. He's had his problems, maybe finding the hole on some of the plays at the line of scrimmage, but he can definitely come up with a nice big play or two. I thought he had a really good game overall against the Lions last week as well. So I'd be a little surprised, but again, I without knowing the exact status of where he's at, I think questionable is a very good status to have, because I think it's up in the air right now.
Now, all year long, the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has been trying to dial up the deep ball. Haven't quite connected on it yet. They've had some opportunities, but haven't really taken advantage of that. How's the Vikings defense when it comes to slowing down guys on those vertical route concepts?
Well, they did really good on that last drive against the Lions last week, because they had 8 people behind the butt. They've been okay. That hasn't been a huge point of concern. They don't have a ton of speed on the outside with Breland and Peterson. Peterson is on the wrong side of 30, and he isn't the speed demon. But usually, Zimmer, unless he's dialing up a big blitz, which it's tough to tell pre-snap where he's dialing up the extra pressure from. A lot of times he'll bring Harrison Smith down and rush the quarterback, but it's usually when Zimmer kind of assumes that it's not going to be a deep shot. There have definitely been a handful completed, but it hasn't been a huge weak point for the Vikings defense. But I mean, if it's there, especially with the wide receivers that the Steelers have, I could definitely see 1 or 2 connecting, but it hasn't been something that on my list of worries. It isn't as high as some of the other things going into this game.
Okay, I want to get to the most important part of this game, and that is the Jordan Berry factor.
Your old friend.
Steeler fans were pretty happy to get rid of Jordan Berry. He was known as a punter who shanked a lot of punts and got worse as the weather got colder. How has he done in Minnesota?
He's done fine. Like he's been really good on getting other teams inside the 20. He hasn't been booming punts by any means. I think his net average and regular air average has been pretty middle of the road. But that's been one of the pleasant surprises overall of the Vikings season. Is special teams has been a pretty sore spot the last few years. Of course, the kicking and especially extra points. You're never out of the woods with the Vikings, but that's been overall better. The punt coverage, I think, is really good under special teams coach Ryan Ficken, and Barry has been serviceable. Like, I don't think he's been outstanding. I don't think he's going to get voted to the Pro Bowl or anything, but he's been doing a pretty good. I think last week was only his 2nd or 3rd touchback of the entire season, so he's been doing a good job at trying to flip the field. No major complaints, and I'm a little surprised because I knew Steelers fans weren't they weren't too sad to see Barry leave, but he's been okay, and when it comes to Vikings and special teams, okay is just great.
Yeah, I want to throw in real quick. This year is his best yards per punt of his career.
There we go.
By like I think a solid over a yard. So he's doing significantly better than he was here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I'm guessing part of that might have to do with playing in US Bank Stadium instead of Heinz Field for all the home games, and of course getting the Detroit game as well. But yeah, it's been better than expected with Barry, that's for sure.
Flipping things back over to the defensive side of the football now. One of the Steelers' better players is another rookie and tight end, Pat Freiermuth. He's put out some decent tape, but I'm just curious how the Vikings try to defend top flight tight ends and whether or not the rookie could put up another big statistical performance.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Hawkinson had a touchdown against the Vikings last week, and he had a pretty solid game overall. The tight ends haven't killed the Vikings this year, but they haven't played. Like, I'm trying to go back through the schedule. It's been a rather light schedule with the kind of the star. I guess star tight ends are kind of few and far between after the upper echelon kind of guys, but the Vikings really haven't faced a ton of them either way so far this season. It's been usually the Vikings defense, the way Zimmer handles the safeties with help in the middle. It's not a huge concern, but with Freiermuth, I think that's going to be. I would expect him to be involved in the offense. I think he could definitely have a game like Hawkinson had last week, where he's steadily involved. It might not be a ton of splash plays, but getting those first downs and keeping moving the sticks. That it really kind of depends on what kind of pressure that the Vikings get, I think, with their outside guys. Because again, after they don't have their starting two defensive linemen. They don't have Everson Griffen. They don't have Danielle Hunter available. So if they can get decently consistent pressure with the front four and not have to send a lot of extra blitzers, then I think they'll do okay guarding the tight end. If they have to send extra pressure, especially that's the Vikings like to send that the A gap pressure and send a safety here and there just to keep the offense honest. That's where I could see Freiermuth having a much bigger game.
With the Vikings overall, what's the number one thing the Steelers need to stop for the Vikings to beat the Vikings, or need to pull off to beat the Vikings?
Well, Justin Jefferson. That's in 1, 2, and 3, especially with Thielen out. I think it's a lot easier said than done. Even with Thielen out, Jefferson's going to get his receptions. This was actually last week was the first time that Jefferson had 7 or more receptions and the Vikings lost. That was the Vikings are 0-6 when he doesn't have 7 receptions, and up until last week they were undefeated when he did. He's going to get open. He's going to get some catches. They're going to scheme him open. They'll do some short passes. They like to do end arounds. I think he's even thrown like 3 or 4 passes this season. So he'll definitely be involved. I think that'll be the number one thing, and just making sure that the supporting pieces don't do too much. I think the Vikings, they probably run too many screens, in my opinion. They like to run that screen game. They like to hit their tight end Conklin on a lot of those, and I'm sure they'll run a few of those to Madison and or Cook, depending on who's playing. But I think that's the biggest thing. And it seems like as long as the opponents avoid enough mistakes, the Vikings usually try to find a way to beat themselves. So just kind of force Cousins and the offense into a couple turnovers. Although another crazy weird stat about the Vikings this year is that they're 1-4 when winning the turnover battle this year. Like before this season under Zimmer, they were 45-9 when they won the turnover battle. So even when the Vikings do get, win that, it's not a guarantee because they've found really, even by Viking standards, really creative ways to lose games. But I think if you keep Jefferson in check, make sure that the supporting pieces aren't consistently getting first downs, I think the Steelers have a good chance. And again, I expect it to be close, but it's going to be tough if Jefferson doesn't get a significant amount of yards and catches.
So we are approaching the end of our time with Eric now. We like to end our segments with our guests with one final question to completely put you on the spot. What is the final score of this game, and what do you anticipate on a short week of football?
Well, I think it's going to be very Thursday nighty, which is there's going to be some sloppy play. There's going to be some missed tackles. There's going to be plays where both fans on both sides are going to be pulling their hair out and being like, "What the heck was that?" I think points are going to be pretty tough to come by overall. I'm worried about that the Steelers pass rush, especially Watt. And from what I've seen on film of the Steelers, I thought last week was nice, but I think I'm definitely not as afraid of Roethlisberger as I used to be in their last matchup. So I think And I'm not being a homer when I pick this. I think it's more of like what we already discussed with it's kind of the Thursday night, the Steelers history of it, and it's just the Vikings being at home, and the fact that after losing to the only winless team in the NFL last week, it makes the least amount of sense for the Vikings to bounce back and actually have a decent win over a pretty solid Pittsburgh team, and especially a well-coached Pittsburgh team. So that's why I'm picking it, because nothing in this 2021 season is making any sense for the Vikings. Every time you think they're going to zig, they zag, and vice versa. So this is just purely like I hope that it's maybe a little wishful thinking. I'll say something along the lines of let's go 19-16 Vikings. I think it's going to be kind of a rock fight, I think, tomorrow. But maybe that score goes a little higher with a defensive touchdown or two or special teams or something. It'll be something crazy. I mean, I just kind of almost want to fast forward to the last 5 minutes of the game where it's a one possession game, and with whatever, whoever doesn't screw up the most is going to win, because I feel like that's what it's going to be yet again for the Vikings.
Yeah, that sounds just about right. 1916, that's probably scoregami. So I mean, that's exactly what we're cheering for, I think. But Eric Thompson, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. Much appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Alrighty. So with that being said, everyone watching on YouTube and Facebook, just hang tight. We're going to flip over to part 2. If you're on the audio side, you're going to have to click over to this second part right now. And Eric, thank you once again for your time today.
Of course. That was a blast. Thanks, guys. And shoot stuff out Twitter and everything, and I'll share that as well. So
of course.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you around.
All right. Best of luck after tomorrow night.
You as well.
All right. Later.
Alrighty, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. It's time for the second half of our show now. Geoffrey, how you feeling with this short week? I feel mixed feelings about it, but being the road team on Thursday night, that's kind of a sticky situation.
I don't know. I'm still riding like the improbable win over the Ravens, like high. I'm still kind of on that right now. That was a great game. We went through all the analysis and talked all last week about how basically there's no reason the Steelers should beat the Ravens. And then at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I'm not picking the Steelers to lose at Heinz Field with the Ravens. And I picked them to win, and they did. How are you feeling about your choice for your prediction for that last game there, Michael?
Why are you calling me out, Geoffrey Benedict? You're calling me out on film room, on your on the cutting room floor. You're calling me out on Know Your Enemy. Goodness, you called me out on Twitter. You're trying to start a fight between the two hosts.
Yeah, the Steelers getting absolutely crushed, and you're like, I don't even know if they can keep it that close. Like, the Ravens are going to put up like 50 points on the Steelers,
whoa,
and the Steelers are going to
50.
The Steelers are going to score like -2 points or something here.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll atone for my sins. I thought Baltimore was going to beat the barn doors off the Steelers defense. That was before TJ Watt was ruled out, was ruled into the game. He was still in COVID protocols, and we didn't think he was playing. He also went freaking off. So
he did. He absolutely did.
Excuse me for that.
That's the only reason we won that game is TJ Watt was just like, nope, this is my game.
And if he didn't play, how different would you think it would have been, Geoffrey? How different?
I think the Steelers still would have won.
Oh,
just
sure.
by less. They would have won by less.
Less than 1 point. Yes.
Yes. It would have been like a
19.1. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been great.
Okay. Yeah. See,
now I will say there's no like that 2-point conversion. Man, I know we're trying to talk about Minnesota, but I got to talk about this one. That 2-point conversion play, I've seen all over like social media, all over the internet, people discussing, who should have been covering Mark Andrews. The reality of that play is that was Minkah Fitzpatrick's guy, but Minkah is reading run first. Joe Schobert's in the middle. They often will switch a guy who goes over there to the middle linebacker. Joe Schobert's playing run 100% of the way. Everyone else has a man they're covering, right? So Mark Andrews is wide open. How you defend that would be like TJ Watt kind of playing off and kind of splitting the difference and watching him. The entire design of the Ravens play was, if you rush Lamar, we have Mark Andrews wide open for a touchdown. If you drop and cover, you look at the play, it's a run play. Lamar's taking it straight into the end zone. The Steelers' entire approach to those the Ravens' entire offense is built on these little 2-man games, right? Like that little situations. They run their entire offense that way. And the Steelers' approach to that is TJ Watt, go get Lamar Jackson. Make Lamar Jackson either hand the ball off to a running back or beat you. And on that play, because it was a pass, Lamar Jackson had to get that pass past TJ Watt accurately, and he couldn't do it. And that's like the reason Mark Andrews is wide open is because the Steelers gamble on TJ Watt go make a play and be better at your job than Lamar Jackson is at his. And that's how that play occurred. As pretty much how the Steelers designed their defense to work on a play like that is, okay, you got us, but can you beat TJ Watt still?
I'm going to get into that play in a moment, but I'm still kind of offended the amount of times you've called my name out. Like, are we going to have to get into a fist fight on the air here? Just hit you with the ba-donk, ba-ba.
Hey, you know what? On camera in this format, I'm like the same size as you, man. In reality, you've got you've got several inches and a decent amount of weight on me, but I'm a big man on the internet.
Aren't we all?
6'5" on the internet, man. Don't start with me now. I may be 5'9" in real life. But I'm 6'5" online.
Hey, you're as tall as you say you are online. That's exactly what it comes down to, right?
That's right.
Oh, goodness gracious. Man. Anyhow, that was a great play. TJ Watt, that was one of the best defensive performances I can think of in some time. Like James Harrison's Monday nighter against Baltimore. That one comes to mind.
That probably tops.
I mean, there's a touchdown involved in there, and really kind of turned the tables. That was like a half. Like James Harrison had a good first half, but his second half was that's when he became James Harrison. You know, that was, whew. But
and they both had old alumni in presence, the old team around for both of those games.
Interesting. That's actually really interesting, huh? But do you think TJ, like, obviously this is a big topic of conversation now. TJ Watt, he continues this pace. First of all, if he pulled this pace all year, it would be 27 sacks would be what he's pacing. He's still on pace for 24. The record is 22.5. TJ Watt has only played in about 9 games when you factor out all the quarters he's missed and all the games he's missed. This is ridiculous. He's putting up dumb numbers. Say he breaks the sack record. Sorry, I'm getting all excited here. If he breaks the sack record, Steelers make the playoffs. People are saying MVP. Is that crazy? I know it's a defensive player, and this is basically a quarterback award. But is that crazy? 24 sacks?
No, it isn't. One of the things that drives me crazy is people are like, what's one player worth? Well, that depends on the rest of the team. Right now, with the team situation we have, the Steelers without TJ Watt don't have pass rush. They don't have it. And their defensive backs can't win with coverage if we're blitzing. You have no defense if TJ Watt's not in there. Our defense is awful without TJ Watt. With TJ Watt, it's good. The difference between awful and good is pretty evident if you look at the Steelers' record when TJ's not healthy. When he's not healthy, the Steelers are terrible. When he's healthy, they got 6 wins. With him, they've got 0 without him, or any of the games where he first comes back from injury and he's clearly not playing well. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd difference. And he should absolutely be in consideration for the MVP, especially. I mean, if he breaks the sack record and the Steelers continue to win games based pretty much on TJ Watt being their defense, then yeah, he's an MVP candidate and he should get it. That's as valuable as any quarterback. Quarterbacks get credit for everything because they touch the ball every game. Every play they touch the ball. Center doesn't get credit for plays, but they touch the ball. Right? Michael, what about your stats?
Whoa. You know what? In my career, okay, first of all, why are you flaming me today? What the hell is going on here? What did I do? Oh my goodness gracious. Anyhow, I did score 1 touchdown in my career. Believe it or not, it was a fumble. Recovered it. The ball already happened to be in the end zone, but I still picked it up, so I scored a touchdown. So
there you go.
But yeah, I have
there you go.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But jeez. Huh.
I didn't mean that insultingly. I'm saying like quarterbacks are get way too much credit. Like Antonio Brown, Hines Ward could have thrown dump offs, right? And yet the quarterback's like, oh, dude, did you see that screen pass? They took it 60 yards. That quarterback was top notch. I hate quarterbacks.
And we'll get away from the TJ Watt stuff and really preview this game in a moment. But I still want to kind of chat a little bit on him because of how insane he has been playing.
Yeah,
I believe
absolutely.
The stat is when he's missed at least a quarter of game time, the Steelers are 0-4-1. Meaning when he hasn't, they are 6-1 then. Excuse me. They're 0-3-1 when he misses at least a quarter. They're 6-2 when he plays the full game. But when he plays a full game and isn't coming off of an injury from the week prior, they're 6-0. A healthy TJ Watt, the Steelers are 6-0.
Yeah.
Like that's not coincidence at that point. Like it really is ridiculous how much worse the Steelers are when he's not on this team. It's crazy.
The last time a player in the NFL made this much difference on a team, it was Minkah Fitzpatrick coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers and completely turning their defense around. Like that, it kind of goes to show that while the NFL is one of the most team-based sports in existence, or all 11 players matter, because of that, there are certain players that can be incredibly valuable in the situation they're in, right? Where Minkah Fitzpatrick came and we had no free safety. We had no deep coverage. We were getting torched deep. And Minkah Fitzpatrick went from the Steelers are the worst deep ball defending team in the NFL to they are the best. And that's a huge swap. TJ Watt takes the Steelers from we don't know what to do with quarterbacks. We just watch them throw the ball and give them all day to throw and they just tear up our defense to we're leading the NFL in sacks. He takes us that way. And in a league this pass-oriented and this quarterback-friendly, pass rush is one of the key elements teams have to have.
So you brought up Minkah Fitzpatrick and coming to the Steelers. So I just want to bring up, do you remember when Cam Kelly was the starting safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers against the New England Patriots? Do you remember that?
You know how many film rooms I had to deal with that? I went an entire offseason watching so much Cam Kelly. It was awful. You want to have nightmares? Go watch the all 22 film of our pass defense with Cam Kelly back there. We had no deep coverage, none, and that was when Terrell Edmonds had no idea what to do deep, no idea what to do in deep zone, and they're like, Terrell, you're our free safety, go, and it was bad, it was terrible, and then they were like, so Cam Kelly, nope, that's worse. Like there was nobody, and then Minkah Fitzpatrick comes in, and it's just lights out from there on.
We went from the 32nd ranked free safety to the number 1. Huh?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. That's how you turn an entire season around, and that's really the Steelers. The difference between Derek Tuska, Taco Charlton, and TJ Watt is the difference between 6-0 and 0-5-1.
Yeah, no, and that is insanity. But getting into this weekend, tomorrow's game, or if you're listening on the podcast side, today's game. So getting into this Vikings matchup, being the road team on Thursday Night Football pretty much means you have a 20% chance of winning the game. Like it is a ridiculous amount of times the home team wins on Thursday night. It's just the nature of the game. You don't have a lot of time to prepare. Usually teams are going on back-to-back flights on a very short week. You don't get any practice. The home team is the overwhelming favorite. Are you worried about the Steelers because of this and because of a poor road record? Well, really, every team has a poor road record on Thursday Night Football. Are you worried about this game?
Absolutely. The biggest factor I think in Thursday night games is just being tired. It's just not being ready, being worn out, and not being in football condition. You're starting the game already out of, football condition to play a game. And then when you're the home team, teams feed off their fans. When you have a whole week off, when you have all that stuff and you're in position, you can overcome that and it's not as big a deal. But I think really when you've got a team that's two teams starting the game tired, that home field advantage is such a big deal with the fans. So I really do. I think it's a big deal. Because looking at this game, I mean, really, The Steelers should just beat them. The Steelers should really have a good game here and beat the Minnesota Vikings. Like even we were talking before the show started. Ahkello Witherspoon played the Vikings, actually did a good job against Stephon Diggs back when he was a starter with San Francisco. He played good last week. If we have another good game from him, he's exactly the kind of cornerback you want covering Justin Jefferson because he can handle him deep. He's got the speed, he's got the ball skills, he's got that. That's his best part of his game. And if you give him some underneath help to deal with all the other stuff, maybe Minka up in shorter coverage to help that and take that away and let Witherspoon just take him deep, you can bracket him all day. It's a great setup. Pressure. Yeah. He's not good dealing with pressure. TJ Watt, pretty good at getting down the quarterback. So for me, like, everything looks great for the Steelers. And the one real problem you'd have is, Adam Thielen and then Dalvin Cook. And if Dalvin Cook plays, he's probably not 100%. So it's like everything's kind of set up for the Steelers to have a really good game here. And yet we're the Thursday night road team. And that says we're probably going to go into this game and be like, we don't, what sports is this foosball? Like, are we playing NBA Live? What are we doing here? Like, they're not going to remember how to play football. Someone on the field is going to be like, I just forgot how to play football suddenly. And the Steelers are going to give up stupid plays. That's what I expect because it's Thursday night and we're on the road.
Okay, not to get too far ahead of myself, but after a Thursday night game, that means you have a mini bye week. We will preview this game more with some close personal friends to the show. But the Steelers play the Titans on 10 days rest. Does that make you a little bit more confident going into the Titans matchup the week after?
Oh, that's going to be fun, man. That's going to be a good game. Especially if the Steelers somehow beat the Vikings, right? Woo! And they're 7-5-1, going to play the Titans with a chance to go 8-5-1. You give the Steelers, you give Matt Canada, you give Keith Butler and Mike Tomlin, you give them an extra, couple of days to really dig in and kind of come up with a specific game plan for this team to implement a bit. Because you can give the guys a day off, an extra day off, or even 2 days off, and still get more practice than you usually do. So I can't. That's going to be a fun game. This one is more like, the only good thing is I don't have like 3 extra days to worry about this game. Like I'm still like I said, I'm kind of still riding the high from the Ravens game, and then tomorrow I'm like, oh yeah, football again. Okay, cool. What's this? Oh, it's the Steelers playing like crap. But
if the Steelers are able to win this game, though, there is kind of a chaos theory that I posted on my own Twitter account. If Cleveland knocks off Baltimore, if the Steelers beat Minnesota, and the Bengals lose to the Niners, the division basically goes Ravens 8-5, Steelers 7-5-1, and then the Browns at 7-6, and the Bengals are in last at 7-6. Like seriously, it goes. Everything can go bananas. This is going to be the tightest race this division has ever seen, ever, between all 4 teams. This is ridiculous. Have you seen anything like this in the sport of football before?
The NFC East has pulled off a couple of years like that, where they're all
4?
where all 4 were within like a game or two of 500, and they were doing. There was a couple seasons in the 90s, I think they pulled that off. I could be wrong, but I think they had some. They were at least close if they didn't actually pull it off. But yeah, it's really rare. It's really rare, and the reason I think it's happening is because the Steelers should be, and we're expected to be the worst team in this division, and yet they're not. They're just like, nope, we're not going to do that. Yeah, okay, we probably should be the worst, but nah, we won't. And I love that about the Steelers is they're just like, nah, we're not going to be the worst team. We'll find a way to beat Baltimore. We'll find a way to beat the Browns.
It's wild to me for like as much as I've talked down this team because like they really aren't this juggernaut of an NFL team. I don't even the biggest homer for the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't come out and be like, oh yeah, this is the best team in the league. Like let's be realistic with ourselves here. They're a decent football team. Yeah, but they could still win the division and really Would it surprise me? Not a whole lot, really. Like, if future me sent me a telegraph right now and said, hey, in 2 months from now, the Steelers won the AFC North, I'd be like, wow, how about that? And I'd be like, it kind of makes sense with the position they put themselves in. Joe Burrow's hand is messed up. That's going to greatly affect the Bengals down the stretch here. The Steelers have a real shot at winning the division. Somehow, I feel like it's harder to be a wild card team with the teams they've lost to. Basically, you kind of have to rely on the Bills to continue to lose if the Steelers want to have a tiebreaker over anyone. When it comes to that, the tie really throws a wrench in everything because they won't have a similar record to anyone anymore. So basically, they just got to tie them on wins. But the Steelers lost to the Chargers. They lost to the Raiders. They got to play the Chiefs. It's interesting mix right now. So it feels like winning the division is still the Steelers' best way to get in, which is surprising with 7 playoff slots. But before we hammer out the more Vikings preview, the back half of the show here, with just a handful of games left, do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to make the playoffs? Period. No.
I don't think the way it looks, I still think they're going to end up, what would it be now? 9-7-1.
That might be enough though.
Ooh. Or 8-8-1. 8-8's on the table. And man, that's just a really tempting number to be like, the Steelers could be the first team to go 500 in an odd game season. They could do that. And that would be the most Mike Tomlin rebuilding year thing ever would be. We don't care that you added a 17th game. Everyone's like, well, now Mike Tomlin can't go 500. Mike Tomlin's like, yeah, you know what I can do? I can go 500. How about that now? I have a real hard time not saying the Steelers end 8-8, even when they were terrible. When they were like when they were 1-3, I was like, they're going to be 8-8, and they came back and they're like 5-3. I'm like, they're going to be 8-8, and I'm going to stick with it. They're going to be 8-8-1. It's going to happen.
Man, yeah, this is a streaky as hell team. But it's funny after you trashed me at the beginning of the show for me picking the Ravens to win in a dramatic fashion. Now you're picking them to not make the playoffs. Really, to me, the Steelers' playoff hopes comes down to winning this game. If they knock off Minnesota, the Steelers are going to be in a real good shot by, even if they lost to the Titans and the Chiefs, their last 2 weeks against the Browns and Ravens, you win both of those, you might win the division. The key here is winning, 3-2 over this backstretch. 3-2 at minimum. That's what you need to get to make the playoffs at minimum. So to me, you have to win Thursday night football. Is that correct estimation? Do the Steelers have to go into Minnesota, pull off the W, move to 2-1-1 against the NFC North?
Yeah, to make the playoffs, yeah, absolutely. I think they can beat I think they can beat the Ravens and Browns again. But there's some other teams on there that are going to be rough. There's going to be some rough games.
The Chiefs are red hot right now. That is scary. Yeah. The Titans are weird. They're losing games they should win and winning games they probably shouldn't. But they are a weird football team right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh won that one with the extra rest at home. Hell, if the Steelers went 4-1, if the Steelers go 4-1 over the last 5 weeks here, I'm picking them to win the North.
Is there any chance Bud Dupree plays the Steelers?
I don't think so. It seems
is he on injured reserve?
Yeah, he's on IR.
Done. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's done.
If Bud Dupree was playing the Steelers, the Bud Dupree Dan Moore matchup would be a nightmare for the Steelers, and I'd be like, you don't have a chance. But yeah, Bud Dupree, I believe he's done for the season. So
he's on the short-term IR, but it seems more. I'm pretty sure he is. But it's more likely not he doesn't play this year, which would also affect the compensatory formula, meaning the Steelers get a 4th rounder instead of a 3rd rounder for losing Bud Dupree, which really sucks, especially with how much Joe Haig has played. They might lose another pick with him, and comp picks didn't go very well as we thought they were going to go.
Yeah, you got to commit to the comp pick thing like Belichick style to really make it work.
Pick up 5 a year? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this is a big game, obviously, as we mentioned. What do the Steelers have to do? If I said you got to check 3 boxes, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, what are 3 things that they have to do to win this game?
Okay, I'll give you 2, and then the real big one is the 3rd one. Okay. You got to get pressure TJ Watt basically has to be TJ Watt.
He's got to keep going off.
He's got to keep doing it.
And he can do it.
You've got to not shut down. You got to slow down Justin Jefferson, keep him from beating you, because I don't think the rest of the offense really can.
Yeah.
And the number 3 one, and the most important one, is win the punter battle. Presley Harvin the third versus Jordan Berry in prime time on Thursday night, people. The punting match of the century right here. Grudge match. Let's go.
Sell it.
Punt the ball. It's gonna be. That's the key. That's the key to the game right there.
Hey, you know what? There is a storyline there. They were both on the roster to start the year. But by all accounts, Barry had a slightly better training camp in preseason. But it was just time. There's no way the Steelers could have rolled again with Jordan Berry.
This is gonna be a kicker punter game.
If Presley Harvin got consistent, he might be the greatest punter in the history of the sport. With how he can kick a football, the way he downs it, he's not consistent though.
What's the problem we always have with punters in Pittsburgh? They're inconsistent.
Yeah.
Ever since conspiracy theory, Heinz Field, which by the way is like the worst place for field goal kickers in the NFL. It's one of the worst, and we don't even act like that affects punters at all. But I'm like, notice how punters are really good, and then they come to the Steelers and they're like, I'm going to shank one out of every 4 punts. Just because now I'm a Steeler, and it's either Danny Smith hates punters and kicks them, he goes and stabs them in the middle of the night and wakes them up and punches them and stuff, and is whispers you're no good, you're terrible, shank it into their ear while they're sleeping or something. Or maybe it's Heinz Field is just bad for punters. I don't know, but I don't know. It's become crazy because Presley Harvin III was not a guy who shanked punts in college, and now he is a guy who shanks punts. Why? Because he came to the Steelers. Jordan Berry leaves the Steelers. His long yardage is shorter than it was on the Steelers, and he doesn't have as many big punts there, but he has better yards per punt because he's not shanking anything. It doesn't make sense. I'm trying to make something make sense that doesn't make sense. It's just crazy. Punters come to the Steelers and they're like, let's shank something.
I see in the live chat, and I couldn't agree more. I'm going to have to back up a dump truck worth of popcorn for this punting matchup. A dump truck full of popcorn. That's how much anticipation I have for this punting matchup between former Steeler and current Steeler. That's a big time football 5-star matchup because we in it. We're approaching the end of the show here. So that means it's time to make our game picks. And I wonder if I'm going to be negative, but Geoffrey, I'll let you go first here.
Oh, I'm going to be worse than negative.
Uh-oh.
This game is going to be a game of kickers. It's going to be punters and kickers.
3-0.
And worse.
2-0?
You want my prediction?
No.
6-6.
Oh, no, it's not going to be another tie.
Nope. I was going to have the Steelers lose this game simply because of the Thursday night thing. I will never pick the Steelers to win on the West Coast when Brian Roethlisberger is playing, and I will not pick the Steelers to win when they're a road team on Thursday night. I'm not going to do it, but our guest convinced us that Minnesota's not winning this game either. I'm now convinced Minnesota is also not going to win this game. So we've got two teams that will absolutely refuse to win this game, similar to how Minnesota refused to let Detroit give them the game as much as Detroit tried last week. The Steelers are going to play bad enough to lose, and Minnesota is going to be like, no, not going to happen. And we're going to end up with a 6-6 tie in what is the greatest kicking duel in NFL history.
Shut your mouth.
With something like 12 punts in overtime.
Ugh. Okay, before I give my prediction here, there's also a kind of a big stat that's coming up on the books here that I think we should bring up here. Ben Roethlisberger's 355 passing yards away from passing Phillip Rivers for 5th place all time. Can he do that on Thursday Night Football where consistently yards are harder to come by?
Oh, absolutely. If the Steelers are getting blown out.
So if it's a close game, you're saying it's not
like
happening.
all we need is Kendrick Green to like, oh gosh, trauma. Just earmuffs if you're sensitive to this, but all we need is Kendrick Green to throw a snap over Ben Roethlisberger's head, have Ben throw a pick 6 in the first quarter, and then totally he could get it.
Well, I just quickly looked it up here. Ben Roethlisberger's season high is 318 yards. So in that sense, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he'll do it against the Tennessee Titans, but not now.
I agree. Now, that's the likely out.
For my score prediction, you would have already heard it on Let's Ride with Geoff Hartman. If you tune into our AM shows, I popped on Wednesday instead of my normal Friday. Geoffrey shaking his head. He just gets jealous when I'm on different shows. Anyway, so Geoff Hartman and I kind of broke it down a little bit, and I am picking the Pittsburgh Steelers to win in triumphant fashion. They are going into Minnesota. I think TJ Watt has another solid game. The Vikings offense is just so ravaged with injuries. I can't see them scoring a lot of points. With a limited playbook, I feel like they could even rotate Minkah Fitzpatrick to be the bracket guy over Justin Jefferson, because there just isn't that other talent you have to worry about as much. So might as well go best on best, shut down Jefferson, force them to beat you with what they don't got. I got the Pittsburgh Steelers winning this game 27-14. They're winning by more than 10 points, people. That's what I got. And maybe you think I'm crazy, but nah. And when inevitably I'm right, I'm going to trash Geoffrey Benedict's tie prediction because I'm sick of him coming for my throat.
I just want to say that what we should really, I think all of our listeners should take away from the show is that Michael Beck predicted that the Steelers would lose to Baltimore. That's all you need to take away from this.
I'm going to load this up too. From Steelers Pittsburgh, no way. Beck has cursed us. Geoff Hartman said the same damn thing.
Season. You've done pretty well this season picking. I think you're more accurate than me.
I'm pretty sure the 2 times I picked them to lose, they've won though. So anytime I pick them to lose, they win. So that's not great. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you're not doing very good.
Actually, you know what? I'm pretty sure I picked them to lose 3 or 4 times. Like I'm either 2-2 or 1-2 picking them to lose. So
there you go. Well, now you're picking them to win.
I am on a short week.
I'm picking them to tie.
We've been calling for a defensive touchdown all year. It hasn't happened yet. I feel like one's bubbling up. I think something's going to happen. Short week,
Cousins
sloppy football. Oh yeah, I think this is the week, and it's going to be someone random, and we're going to be like, really, that's the guy who got it? It's like Akilla Weatherspoon or like Montravius Adams or however you say his first name.
Dude right there.
Oh, he is the dude.
Fast.
He is
no joke. Like fast, and he hustles.
4.79 or something.
TJ Watt strips that ball. He picks it up. You're going to see him try. You're going to be like, dude, that guy actually runs fast. That would be a great one right there. But it's not going to happen. It's all kickers, man. There's going to be like 30 yards of total offense in this game for both teams combined. The most beautiful punting battle in league history.
Well, you know what? We've done this for an hour, and I'm starting to get sick of your face. So, Geoffrey, please plug what you have going on. If you can stop laughing.
We just had Dave Schofield and I just put out a Vertex about TJ Watt that's really worth looking at, and I've got a film room coming out tomorrow, Thursday. If you're listening to this, go to the site because it's probably just out. If you're listening to this on the podcast on Thursday, that is about Montravius Adams and what he brings to the Steelers. So check that out. I go kind of in depth into it, where his strengths are, where his weaknesses are. Good stuff. Check that out. And but what you really need to remember, though, is that Michael Beck picked the Ravens.
Oh, good God. Geoffrey Benedict just picked the Vikings and Steelers to tie. No,
that's not important. They don't need to remember that.
All right, well, now I'm befuddled. You know what? Go ahead and tune into a superior AM show, the live mic. That and Cutting Room Floor both airs on Tuesdays. You only need to listen to one of them. That's mine. You can skip Geoffrey's, but listen to the entire family Behind the Steel Curtain podcasts. Aside from a snake that you think is your co-host, just throwing you under the bus all the time. But anyhow, there's great content for you. Just wherever you get your podcasts, just Google search Behind the Steel Curtain. Heck, even search Steelers. We're typically in the number 1 slot when it comes to Steelers podcasts. And still, I think for a third consecutive month, the #1 podcast in all of SB Nation. So thank you to you, each and every one of our loyal listeners. We couldn't do that without you. Make sure you're hitting like, subscribe, 5 stars, what have you. Help support the show, helps grow the platform even more, and continues to keep us in that #1 slot. So with all that being said, I also want to remind you to click over to behindthesteelcurtain.com, which should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. It's almost game day, baby. Pittsburgh Steelers Thursday night football against the Minnesota Vikings. I will be on that post-game show, so you'll see me again tomorrow. So tune in then. And once again, for everyone except for Geoffrey, Benedict, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next week.